Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a Mayan village where the air is already flavored with the smell of wood smoke and the earthy perfume of stone dust. The sun hasn't fully lifted its heavy head above the tree line yet, and you're already walking barefoot over packed clay, feeling its coolness clung to your toes. Roosters are trying out their first crow of the day, though some sound like they're still waking up themselves. A few slow drifts of pale smoke climbed from cooking fires and meet in the middle of the village, weaving together in a lazy braid before the morning breeze teases them apart. You probably wouldn't survive long here, honestly, not because of any danger, but because the sheer early morning workload would knock the modern out of you by mid-breakfast. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your location and your local time. I'm always curious where and when you're listening. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pass a low hut where a woman is already kneeling in front of a matate, a broad, slightly concave slab of volcanic rock, and sliding a heavy mano or handstone back and forth across it in an unhurried rhythm. It's a sound like a muffled sigh, repeated again and again, and you realize it's the heartbeat of this place. The matai is older than her, possibly older than her mother. Volcanic stone, carved into shape generations ago, has outlived many hands and will likely outlive many more. Historians still argue whether these grinding stones were first crafted by wandering specialists who traded their work for food, or if every household learned to shape its own. The woman glances up, smiling, and without words gestures you closer. You see her knuckles shine with the sheen of use. You smell faint traces of roasted maize from yesterday still clinging to the stone. This morning, though, she's grinding cacao, though not yet roasted. Today's work begins earlier still. Past her doorway, the village feels like it's quietly stretching awake. A young boy runs by with a woven basket bigger than his torso, the dry grass creaking under its weight. He's heading for the riverbank, where others will wash yesterday's tools. You tag along behind, letting the dew-damp grass cling to your ankles. By the water, the air feels softer, cooler. A pair of older men squat beside a wide, flat stone, scrubbing the surface with river sand to keep it smooth. They joke under their breath, and you catch a laugh when one splashes the other. It's a kind of small-town teasing that's timeless. The matatas here are serious tools. Each one weighs as much as a child and takes years to wear in just right. The volcanic rock isn't chosen at random. It's quarried from places where tiny bubbles once froze into the stone, leaving a naturally pitted surface perfect for catching and crushing cacao nibs. You run your fingers over one such stone and feel the faint dimples like freckles in granite. The men nod, pleased you noticed. One even jokes that a matate without those pits is just a lazy stone taking up space. You wander back toward the center of the village. The air thickens with the smell of damp earth and something faintly sweet. That's when you spot the first baskets of fresh cacao pods, piled high by the shade of a ceiba tree. Their skins are ridged and waxy, colored in mottled greens, yellows, and reds, like tropical Easter eggs left in the sun. A girl of maybe 12 sits beside them, scratching lazy spirals in the dirt with a stick, waiting for her mother to start the day's opening. The work of chocolatier doesn't happen in a sudden rush. It stretches across hours, even days, unfolding as gently as the mist that lifts off the river. And yet, there's a rhythm, the pounding of maize to huts over, the hiss of water poured onto clay camals to check the heat. Somewhere, a dog thumps its tail in dream-slow contentment. You settle into a woven mat outside one hut and let the sounds settle around you like an old blanket. The village is small enough that everyone knows who has the best hand for grinding, the steadiest hand for roasting, the deftest way of foaming chocolate without spilling a drop. This morning, the grinding begins in one corner and slowly spreads outward like ripples. The first paste will be bitter, pure cacao, no spices yet, no honey, no maize. Those come later. Right now, it's about coaxing the beans into surrender. One elder passes by with a shallow basket of dried flowers. He pauses, holds one up for you to smell. The scent is sharp, almost peppery, and he tells you, or rather mimes for you, that it will be used later to scent one of the finer batches. Not every household can spare flowers for chocolate, so the fact that they're here today hints at a celebration coming soon. Historians still debate whether such flavorings were common in daily life or reserved for special events. Here, it seems to depend entirely on mood and supply. You notice that each grinding pair, matad and mano, is set up in a place with just enough light to see the surface clearly, but not so much that the stone heats under direct sun. Is temperamental. Let it warm too much before you want it to, and it sulks. Or, more accurately, it seizes into a stubborn lump that refuses to foam properly later. And nobody wants a flat chocolate drink at the evening gathering. By mid-morning, the air carries layers of scent. You can still smell the wood smoke, but now there's the green, slightly grassy aroma of fresh cacao mingled with faint traces of vanilla pods hanging to dry nearby. The combination is both energizing and oddly calming. You think, not for the first time, that modern air fresheners don't stand a chance against this one woman. Her hair wrapped in a scarlet cloth beckons you over to watch her test the grind. She pinches a bit of paste between thumb and forefinger, rolls it, and nods. Smooth enough for her liking. She flicks it onto a palm leaf with the same satisfaction as someone ticking off the day's first task. You can see the faint trail of paste left on the matayé's surface. Like the signature of the morning's labor, you glance around and realize, without anyone saying so, that the village has slipped fully into the day's chocolate work. It's not frantic, not hurried. There's no clock ticking here, except the slow arc of the sun and the eventual need to have something ready for the marketplace or the evening fire. You could almost forget the outside world exists at all. And yet, even here, there are small disagreements. One older woman insists that starting the grind this early keeps the flavor truer. Another says it makes no difference as long as you roast well. They trade remarks across the yard in a rhythm as familiar as the scraping of stone on stone. You suspect this argument has been running for decades and will keep going long after you leave. A comfortable debate more than a genuine dispute By the time the sun has climbed high enough to cast sharp shadows under the thatch eaves, the grinding slows. Not because the work is done, but because the next stage, collecting and opening more cacao pods, will take over. A few people stretch, flexing wrists, rolling shoulders. Someone jokes about trading a whole basket of cacao for a magical stone that grinds itself. You suspect, if such a thing ever existed, it would be guarded like a royal treasure. The morning has been steady, unshowy, but essential. Smoke, stone, and quiet effort braided together into the first strand of the day's chocolate. You feel yourself sinking into the rhythm, lulled by the knowledge that here, the important work is never rushed, and that even the smallest sound, the sigh of a mono sliding across volcanic rock, belongs exactly where it is. You follow a shaded path out of the village, toward the cacao groves, the hum of the grinding stones fading behind you. The path dips slightly, hugging the curve of a shallow stream whose banks are lined with thick undergrowth. Overhead, the sun filters through a tangle of leaves, dappling your shoulders with gold. The air here is damp and rich, carrying the scent of wet bark and the faint sweetness of fermenting fruit that's fallen to the forest floor. Somewhere ahead, you hear low voices, gatherers already at work. The forest opens into a clearing, dotted with cacao trees, their trunks slender and mottled, the bark marked with pale lichens and deep fissures. The pods hang right from the trunk, as though someone decorated the trees in strange, swollen ornaments. They're heavy with ripeness, and you can tell by the sound when one is tapped. A dull thud for ripe, a harder note for unready. A young man in a woven belt is doing just that, gently knocking on each pod with the back of a short wooden stick. He nods when he finds a ripe one and slices it free with a practiced flick of his obsidian blade. Historians still argue whether the Mayans first cultivated cacao solely for drink, or if it was initially valued for other uses, currency, perhaps, or ritual offerings, before the drink became a staple. Standing here, you can see how easily it could have been all three. The pods feel valuable in your hands, ridged shells holding dozens of beans, each a potential coin, a potential feast, a potential sacred gift. The gatherers move without hurry. Every pod is examined, twisted free, and set carefully into wide baskets. When a basket grows too heavy, it's carried to the edge of the clearing where others will haul it back toward the village. There's a rhythm to it, not unlike the grinding stones you left behind. Only here, it's the rustle of leaves, the thump of pods and baskets, the occasional low whistle when someone spots an especially large one. You stoop to pick up a fallen pod and split it open. The outer shell gives way with a soft crack, revealing the beans nestled inside a cushion of pale, sticky pulp. The pulp smells bright and fruity, almost like lychee, nothing like the chocolate, you know. One of the women nearby laughs and waves you over, motioning for you to taste. You bite into a bean wrapped in pulp and find it sweet, tangy, and cooling. On your tongue, it's an odd prelude to what will later become bitter paste. You chew carefully, letting the pulp dissolve before spitting out the raw bean, which even now has a faint bitterness. The baskets fill steadily. You notice some pods are a deep red, others a speckled yellow-green. Variety, one man explains, means different flavors later, though he also shrugs, suggesting it's as much about tradition as taste. Some families favor one type, some another. Historians still debate whether the Mayans actively bred cacao for flavor or simply for hardiness. But here in the grove, preference feels personal. Once a sufficient haul is gathered, the group turns back toward the village. The walk is heavier. Now the baskets press into shoulders, straps biting into skin. You take a basket for a while, feeling its uneven weight shift with each step, beans knocking together softly inside. The air grows warmer as you approach open ground again. The sun higher now, shadows shorter. Back in the village, the pods are piled under a broad awning to keep them out of direct sun. Now comes the careful work of opening them all, a task that's as much social as it is labor. People gather in a loose circle, sitting on low stools or mats, chatting and laughing, while their hands work. A young boy tests his strength by trying to crack a pod with one hand. An elder shows him the trick of using a short, quick twist of the wrist instead. The opened pods reveal their beans in gleaming white pulp, each one dropped into large clay bowls. The air grows sweet and a little sour, the scent thickening as more beans accumulate. Flies hum lazily nearby, but are shooed off with practiced swipes. Fermentation begins almost immediately. The beans, still coated in their pulp, are tipped into large clay jars or woven baskets lined with banana leaves. Here they will sit for several days, the pulp breaking down, heat building within the pile. The smell will change, deepening into something more complex, less sugary. You lean over a jar already fermenting from last week's harvest and catch the faint temps of alcohol, the earthy note of transformation. Someone stirs the fermenting beans with a wooden paddle, releasing a wave of scent that is both inviting and strange. This is the stage most people skip over when imagining chocolate, the part where it smells more like a rustic brewery than a dessert shop. Yet without it, the beans would never develop their rich, layered flavors. The Mayans knew this instinctively. Long before modern science explained the chemistry, a few curious facts drift your way. One elder swears that the flavor changes if you sing over the jars, that the beans hear the music and grow smoother in taste. You can't tell if he's teasing, but several people nod along. Another insists that fermenting beans must never be moved during a storm, lest the lightning shock the flavor. Historians would call these superstitions. Here, they're simply part of the craft. By late afternoon, the day's gathered pods are reduced to neat piles of shells and full jars of fermenting beans. The shells will be left to dry and eventually burned, their ash sometimes used in making lime for cooking maize. Nothing is wasted. You see small children playing with bits of shell, stacking them like tiny boats in the shallows of a puddle. In the warm shade, the fermenting jars rest quietly. You're struck by how unhurried the whole process is. In your world, time is often measured in minutes and deadlines. Here, flavor is measured in days, even weeks. The beans will be stirred occasionally, checked for heat and aroma, but mostly they'll be left alone to do their slow, invisible work. As the sun begins to lower, the air cools slightly. A group of women bring woven mats from storage and lay them out in a sunny patch, ready for the next stage. The beans from previous harvests, now fully fermented, will be spread thin to dry under the sky. But that will be tomorrow's task. For now, focus is on ensuring the day's haul begins its slow transformation in peace. The quiet industry you've witnessed, the gentle knock of pods, the patient twist to open them, the soft slump of beans into jars is its own kind of music. You find yourself humming along without realizing it. The pace seeps into your bones. By the time you notice the grinding stones starting up again in the distance, you've almost forgotten the rush of your own world. Somewhere in the grove, a last pod drops to the ground with a soft thud, unclaimed. Maybe tomorrow it will find its way into a basket. Maybe it will feed the forest instead. Either way, the rhythm continues, just as it has for centuries. The next morning, the faint glow of pre-dawn light leaks across the horizon, and you find yourself drawn toward the sound of hushed voices and the soft occasional clink of clay against clay. It's roasting day. Yesterday's fermented beans, now darker, heavier, and less sticky, have been spread out on woven mats since early light. The pale pulp that once clung to them has disappeared entirely, leaving only the solid promise of cacao. You trail behind two women carrying wide, shallow clay camels. The camels are the color of red earth, each one seasoned from years of use, faintly stained by oil and smoke. They're placed carefully on raised hearths, each lined with a neat tripod of stones to cradle the base. Beneath them, a small pyramid of split firewood is coaxed into a lazy flame. A few dry palm fronds catch quickly, crackling with a scent sharp enough to clear your head. The beans are scooped into the camels in small, careful batches, not too many at once. The goal isn't to scorch them, but to coax them into transformation, to wake the aromas sleeping inside. You kneel nearby, catching the first faint whiff of what your modern brain immediately recognizes as chocolate, though here it's roar. Wilder, edged with wood smoke, and something almost floral. A woman stirs the beans with a smooth, wooden spatula, her wrist turning in a small, practiced circle. The beans tumble against each other with a gentle rustle, a sound like dry leaves in a slow breeze. Every so often, she pauses to lean close, inhaling deeply, judging by scent alone how far along they are. Historians still argue whether this intuitive roasting style was always preferred, or if earlier methods involved more rigid timing. But here you see no timers, no hourglasses, just trust in the senses. The heat grows, and with it the fragrance thickens. The beans take on a deep, reddish-brown sheen. Tiny cracks appear in their shells, releasing delicate puffs of steam and aroma. A boy crouched nearby collects stray shells in a basket destined for the compost heap or the hearth. When one bean pops like a miniature firework, he grins and points, as if this is his favorite part of the whole process. You're handed the spatula. The wood feels warm in your palm, the surface worn silky smooth from years of stirring. As you move the beans gently across the comal, you notice the slight resistance, the way they roll differently depending on where the heat gathers. It's a bit like steering marbles across a warm skillet. A woman nods approvingly. You haven't ruined them yet. Eventually, the beans are deemed ready. They're lifted off the comal and poured into wide baskets lined with clean cloth. A breeze teases the air, carrying away some of the steam and tempering their heat. They'll rest just long enough to be handled without scorching fingertips. Now comes the cracking and winnowing. Sitting in a loose circle, the villagers take the beans in hand, pressing them lightly to break the shells. The brittle skins flake away, revealing the nibs inside, dense little nuggets of pure cacao. The shells are blown away with a short, practiced breath, fluttering like dry petals onto the ground. Some cling stubbornly, and you learn to roll them between your palms first, loosening the shell's grip before trying again. One elder jokes that cacao shells are like stubborn guests at a feast. They take forever to leave and still try to stick to you on the way out. The others laugh, and you catch yourself grinning. Too, the pile of nibs grows steadily. They're smaller than you expect, irregular in shape, but each one holds the essence of the bean's long journey, from grove to fermentation, from sun-drying to roasting. You taste one at someone's urging. It's not sweet at all, but your tongue recognizes the core of what will soon become chocolate. The metates are already waiting. Today, instead of maize, they're dedicated to cacao. The mano, the handstone, feels heavier than you remember, though perhaps it's your arms still adjusting to the village's pace. You place a small handful of nibs on the matata and begin pushing the mano forward and back, the nibs crunching softly beneath its weight. At first, the motion feels purely mechanical, but soon you notice the nibs releasing their natural oils, clumping together into a fragrant, gritty paste. The heat from the friction grows. You feel it in your palms, see the paste darken as it spreads. Across the stone, the surface of the matad, pitted from years of grinding, catches the paste in tiny pockets, holding it still long enough for the mano to crush it finer. The sound is hypnotic. Scrape, press, scrape, press. You fall into a rhythm alongside the others, each working at their own pace, but somehow keeping time together, like different instruments playing in the same slow song. The air grows dense with the smell of warm cacao, and it seems to seep into your skin. Historians still debate whether the Mayans first mixed their cacao paste with water or with other liquids, maize, gruel, perhaps, but here, the first step is always pure paste. Only after it's smooth enough to coat a gourd without clumping will it be combined with anything else. An elder leans over your shoulder, watching your grind. She gestures for you to push with more of your body, not just your arms. You try it, leaning into the motion, and the paste responds, becoming silkier, darker. She nods, satisfied, and moves on to correct someone else. Hours pass without your noticing. The sun shifts overhead, shadows lengthening. The pile of nibs dwindles to nothing, replaced by palm leaf trays of glossy, dark paste. Children dart between the grinding mats, snatching whiffs of the rich aroma before scampering off. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the market's faint rumble beginning to stir, but that's for later. right now. The focus is on perfecting the texture. Any grit left in the paste will reveal itself later, so the grinding continues until every trace of coarseness has been coaxed away. The paste is gathered into neat mounds on leaves, each one ready for the next stage, blending with the flavors. That will make it sing. You wipe your hands on a scrap of cloth, only to find the smell still clinging stubbornly to your skin. You don't mind. It feels like a badge of work done well. The grinding has left your arms pleasantly tired, your mind oddly quiet. You glance around and see the same softened expressions on the faces of the others, a kind of calm that comes from labor rooted in rhythm and tradition. Somewhere, a woman laughs and points to the streak of cacao paste across your cheek. You hadn't noticed it, but judging by her grin, it's not the first time a newcomer's worn the day's work like war paint. You leave it there? Seems fitting. The last of the paste is scraped from the metates, smoothed onto leaves, and set aside. The grinding stones are rinsed with water and rubbed down with smooth river pebbles to keep their surfaces even. They may return to maize, but today they've carried the heart of chocolate from bean to silky paste. As the hearth fires die down, the camals are stacked neatly, their surfaces still faintly warm. The scent of roasted cacao lingers in the air, weaving itself into the village's twilight. And somewhere deep inside you, you realize you've joined the quiet industry, if only for a day, and that its rhythm will hum in your memory long after you leave. The paste rests, dark and dense, on broad leaves arranged like little edible canvases. You watch as women gather around, each with a small bowl or pouch of something fragrant in hand. One has a folded leaf filled with powdered chili, red as sunset. Another cradles a bundle of dried vanilla pods, their skin wrinkled like well-worn leather. A third unties a pouch that releases a perfume of crushed flowers, sweet but also green and sharp. These are the accents that will turn the paste from a simple grind into something worthy of a feast, a barter or an offering to the gods. The first edition is often chilly, not so much that it burns the tongue, but enough to give the drink a spine, a little wakefulness. A woman tips a careful pinch into the cacao paste, folding it in with her fingers, the motion slow and deliberate. The dark paste swallows the red powder like night swallowing fire. You try a taste on the tip of your tongue. The bitterness blooms first, then the warmth creeps in, curling in the back of your throat. It's not a jolt, more a polite nudge, reminding you you're alive. Vanilla is rarer, save for days like this. Its scent drapes itself over the cacao like a silk shawl, softening the edges. You'll hear someone joke that vanilla is the cacao's way of dressing up for company. Others nod, agreeing with a smile. Historians still argue whether flowers like vanilla were everyday additions in Mayan kitchens or more ceremonial luxuries. In this village, it's both, depending on who's doing the mixing and how generous they feel. Some pastes get blossoms folded in, ground petals of the flor de cacao, a tree that blooms in defiance of the seasons. The petals don't overwhelm the flavor, but they add a faint perfume that rises with the steam later. One elder says it pleases the gods. Another counters that it pleases her husband more, and both laugh. Once the flavors are blended, the paste is thinned with warm water in shallow bowls, stirred with wooden spoons until it reaches a glossy, pourable state. The drink is never served flat. Instead, it's poured from a height into another vessel, then back again, over and over. The stream catches the light in midair, and a froth begins to bloom on the surface. That froth, the foamy crown, is considered the soul of the drink. Without it, the gods might turn up their noses, and people certainly would. A boy nearby tries his hand at the pour, only to splash half the drink onto his own feet. Everyone laughs, not unkindly. One woman points out the obvious. The taller the pour, the finer the foam, but also the greater the risk of wearing your drink. You make a mental note to stay humble if you ever try it yourself. Soon, the gourd cups appear. Their smooth, curved surfaces are painted with simple designs, geometric borders, stylized birds, flowers. Each cup is half filled with the thick drink, the foam clinging to the rim like soft clouds. A tray of them is prepared for the market. The walk to the market is not far, but the pace is unhurried. A narrow path winds between fields, the air rich with the smell of damp soil and growing maize. Villagers pass each other, carrying their own goods, baskets of beans, bundles of herbs, folded textiles bright with dye. The market itself is a patchwork of woven mats spread on the ground, shaded by awnings of palm, frond, and cloth. The air hums with voices, traders calling out their wares, friends greeting each other with laughter, the quiet murmurs of bargaining. Here, chocolate is both currency and indulgence. You watch as a man trades a cup for a small, intricately woven sash. Another exchanges paste wrapped in leaves for a basket of fresh peppers. One trader, his teeth stained from chewing annatto seeds, offers you a taste of his own blend, spicier, darker, and made with a pinch of ground maize to give it body. He winks, suggesting his recipe could win hearts faster than any bouquet of flowers. Historians still debate the exact role of chocolate in Mayan marketplaces. Was it primarily a drink for the elite, or was it woven into everyday trade? Watching here, you get the sense it was both a luxury that could also be a casual pleasure, depending on the cup and the company. As the afternoon wears on, the heat gathers under the awnings. The foam on the cups begins to sink a little, but the rich scent only deepens. Children dart between the mats, drawn by the colorful goods and the chance of a sweet sip. If they charm the right person, you linger at one mat where a woman is selling nothing but cacao paste, each portion wrapped neatly in leaves. She explains, or mimes, that it can be kept this way for weeks, even months, until needed. The paste will harden slightly, but a little warm water and patient stirring will bring it back to life. You imagine it as a kind of edible savings account, waiting for the right day to be cashed in. When the sun tips lower, traders begin to pack away their goods. The remaining cups of chocolate are offered at a discount or traded quickly for goods that might not keep overnight. The village's path back home is dotted with people carrying bundles, baskets, and satisfied smiles. The gourd cups return with you, now empty but still fragrant. Some are rinsed at the stream along the way. The chocolate scent lingering in the water. By the time you reach the village, the hearth fires are being coaxed back to life for the evening meal. The air carries both the scent of roasting maize and the ghost of the day's chocolate. And in that mingling of scents, you can feel the rhythm of the place work that begins in the forest, moves through the grinding stones, blossoms in the market, and returns home in quiet satisfaction. A rhythm that turns simple beans into both sustenance and story, connecting the Mayan heart to its land, its people, and its gods. Evening falls softly over the village, settling into that unhurried hum you've grown used to. The market bustle has melted away into the clink of bowls, the low thump of pestles on maize, and the occasional bark of a dog staking its claim over a particularly interesting scrap. Somewhere nearby, the last light glances off the surface of a still warm gourd cup, catching the faint ring of foam clinging to the inside. The chocolate has been drunk, traded, praised, and now it lingers. Only in scent and memory. You follow the path toward the communal hearth, where the final act of the chocolate's journey plays out sharing. The firelight flickers across familiar faces, turning eyes to molten amber. Around the hearth, families gather with bowls of evening chocolate, some thickened with maize gruel for heartiness, others thinned for a lighter, more social sip. The hands that worked the grinding stones this morning now cradle the finished drink, like it's both a reward and a reminder. You take your seat among them, the heat from the clay cup pressing gently into your palms. The drink's surface is still crowned with a faint froth, proof that someone poured it from height just moments ago. The first sip is earthy and bitter at the edges, but the chili's warmth curls in soon after, followed by a whisper of vanilla that smooths the finish. You close your eyes, letting the flavors open in sequence, slow, deliberate, like pages turning. There's an easy murmur of conversation around you, punctuated now and then by a sudden burst of laughter. Someone recalls the boy at the market who tried to pour from as high as the sky and ended up wearing half his drink. Another recounts the elder's superstition that singing over fermenting beans makes the gods smile. And perhaps you think it also keeps the fermentation from feeling too much like work. Historians still argue whether such traditions sprang from necessity or from joy, whether the customs grew out of ritual needs or simply because they made the process feel human. Here, watching faces soften by firelight, you suspect the answer is both. The hearth's glow throws shadows onto the walls, making the grinding stones stacked nearby look like squat little guardians. You remember the sound of them in the morning? The slow scrape, the faint rhythmic tap as nibs became paste. That sound is gone now, but its echo lingers in your muscles. Even your forearms seem to hum with the ghost of the motion. The night deepens. The air cools, carrying the mixed perfume of wood smoke, earth, and chocolate. Somewhere on the far side of the village, you hear the steady rustle of someone still winnowing beans under lamplight. The shells whispering away into the darkness. In another house, a low song drifts out, sung for no one in particular, just as a habit that fits the quiet. You sip again, slower this time. The drink's heat seeps down into you, making your shoulders loosen, your breath stretch longer. You feel yourself sinking into the moment, a warm cup, the glow of the fire, the low music of shared company. Out here, the chocolate isn't an indulgence you snatch between errands. It's a thread woven into the pace of life itself. It has taken days of careful hands and steady patience to arrive here in your cup, and you feel the weight of that journey in every swallow. One of the elders leans toward you, pointing with his chin toward the grinding stones again. He says something in his low, measured voice, words you don't fully understand, but the tone is warm, instructive. You catch enough to realize he's telling you the stones are older than most of the village. Handed down through families, their surfaces a living history of every meal, every cup of chocolate, every hand that's ever leaned into their weight. The thought makes you glance at the matatis with new reverence. As the last of the drink slips away, so does the chatter. People drift back to their own hearths, their own mats, their own quiet. The fire is banked low, the embers glowing like tiny suns in retreat. You sit a while longer, the cup warm in your lap, letting the night wrap itself around you. The moon rises above the cacao groves, silvering the leaves and catching in the ridges of the pods still clinging to the trunks. Somewhere, an owl lets out a short, thoughtful call. The air is so still you can hear the faint creak of wood cooling in the fire pit. You think of the whole journey again. The pods growing fat and glossy on shaded trunks, the careful harvest, and the sweet pulp on your tongue, the warm fermentation jars humming in the heat, the drying mats, the roasting camals, the grind that seemed to stretch time itself. Every step slow enough to notice, deliberate enough to matter, and then the sharing. Always the sharing. Chocolate here isn't just something you drink. It's a circle, a conversation, a way of touching the past every day. You let the thought settle in. You're like the last mouthful of warm, spiced drink. It's quiet now, the kind of quiet that holds its breath. You feel your own breathing join it, slowing without effort, sinking to the soft pulse of the village at night. The stars are pale behind a veil of drifting cloud, and somewhere the grinding stones wait in the dark, patient until morning, when the cycle begins again. And now, as the last embers fade to a faint, glowing whisper in the hearth, your thoughts drift like smoke curling into the cool night air. The village rests, its pathways empty, its doorways drawn in close. The grinding stones are silent for now, their worn surfaces sleeping under a thin dusting of ash and shadow. The air is cool and smells faintly of the day's work, a trace of cacao, a breath of chili, a ghost of vanilla. Each step of the chocolate's journey still lingers here, tucked into the fibers of the mats, the curve of the gourd cups, the smooth stones at the heart of the hearth. You imagine the cacao groves beyond the village, silvered under moonlight, the pods swaying just slightly, as if in quiet conversation with the wind. Tomorrow they'll stand just the same, waiting for the patient hands that will bring them into the rhythm once more. The night presses gently around you now, not heavy, but embracing. It invites you to loosen your grip on the day, to let your thoughts slow until they settle, still and unhurried. In your mind, you can still hear the soft scrape of the mano on the metate. Steady and sure, like a heartbeat you've borrowed for your own. So breathe in slowly and let it go even slower. Feel the warmth you've carried from the hearth spread quietly through you, calming each part of you in turn. Here, nothing is rushed. Here, even the smallest work is done with care. And here, in this place, you can rest, knowing the rhythm will still be waiting for you when you wake. Sweet dreams.